hope I learn something. I hope I learn something. I hope I learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. Welcome, chats. Welcome, YouTube chat. Welcome, D-Live chat. Welcome, Trovo chat. Real quickly, I'm going to give a special shout out to my Gab TV crew. I only have a couple of actual subscribers on Gab TV, but I'm getting some significant, at least in my area, I'm getting some significant views. And I really want to appreciate everyone doing that. The Gab TV audience only gets half the show. Perhaps they're telling me I'm doing too much, and they only need an hour. I don't know. But Gab TV folks, today you are going to get the first half of the news rodeo, as I have a very special message to the woke corporate voices out there. I hope that term catches on, by the way, woke corporate. I've also heard the woke industrial complex. I believe Minority Speaker McConnell said that. But Ray says there's an echo. Okay, all right. I think I know why. Give me just a second and I'll fix it. Just a second. Let's see here. Let me check two things first. Sorry, babble, babble, babble while I fix this echo. No, that's not it. Okay, it's in the sound settings. Give me just a second. Where is that? Here, navigating Windows. Once again, quality live production here on the All Het No Cattle News Radio. Come on, Windows, give me what I want, not what I asked for. Let's try it again. Here we go. All right. Device properties. Additional. Listen. Off. There we go. That should have fixed it. I turned on listen to the microphone so I could hear myself talk a little better, but obviously that was a very, very bad idea. So I do apologize, folks. Let me know if that fixed it. I'm sure it did. It's the only thing I've changed today, so normally that doesn't happen. So anyway, so again, Gab TV, folks, you're going to get the first half of the show today. What I have is a big rant against woke corporate. And then also I've got some good pieces on the backlash against said woke corporate. Thank you, JF. Thank you. And the second half of the show, I have some border stuff, as I always do. But the main focus is going to be on mask regulations on airlines. There was another incident of a very young child supposedly being the catalyst for a family getting kicked off of a Spirit Airlines flight. There's a lot to that story, more than just the usual, we made them deplane, but allowed them to get back on later. That's a really, really bizarre story. So we will get into that. But first, our Babylon Bee bookend to start the show. This is one on the left from their tech section. Google removes entire state of Georgia from Google Maps. By the way, the two Babylon Bees today, the headlines are outstanding. It's going to be one of the best Babylon Bee days I think we've ever had. Moving right along. Dateline, Mountain View, California. Tech giant Google announced today that they are removing the entire state of Georgia from their Google Maps platform, effective immediately. This comes in response to the state's recent voter law that many are calling racist. Said a spokesman from the Google Office of Diversity, Inclusion, Anti-Racism, Climate Change, Immigration Reform, and LGBTQ Affairs, quote, "We cannot allow these racist laws to stand. That's why we must act quickly to get states like Georgia off the map, both literally and figuratively," close quote. Starting today, the state of Georgia will be replaced by a blue body of water labeled Sea of Racism on all Google Map platforms. Driving directions given by the site will be altered. For example, directions from South Carolina to Florida via I-95 will state, quote, "Continue south through the stupid sea of racism without stopping for 112 miles," close quote. Google will also be updating searches for locations inside the state. A search for directions to Atlanta, Georgia now returns the following message, quote, "Location not found. Would you like to travel to a Google-approved destination such as Seattle, Minneapolis, or Beijing?" Close quote. The spokesman went on to clarify that Google hasn't completely abandoned the state. He noted, Google will still provide one-way driving directions out of the state for anyone who currently resides in Georgia. Also, we will still provide directions to any out-of-state celebrities or businesses who want to donate money to the Georgia Democratic Party. Close quote. Thank you, Babylon Bee, for an excellent opening. As always, let's continue right along. And now, my personal conceit, the market. Slight pullback today across all three major indices. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 NASDAQ were all down a fraction, pulling away the Dow Jones from record territory. Gold was up just under 1%. Crude oil staged a rally, is now at $59.39 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. It was lower than that earlier. And Bitcoin has been whipsawing around the 59,000 mark again. Currently, changes rapidly, of course, currently at right around 58,270 per Bitcoin. Moving right along. All right, big news, vaccine passports. We've talked about them. I went over, I think, in pretty good detail why they're such a horrible idea. I played that interview with Naomi Wolf last week, who really laid out the horrible, horrible things that can happen when you start requiring things like a vaccine passport. Excuse me, and the absolute rabbit hole you fall into when you start doing things like that. And almost immediately, when this idea started getting kicked around by 46 Asterisk. New York State has already implemented this for the most part. IBM put together a system for them, as I understand it. But Florida came out immediately. Governor DeSantis said, no, we are not having vaccine passports in this state. So pretty much cutting off the 46 Asterisk administration at the pass if they tried to do something. And more states have followed. Most immediately was Texas. Republican Governor Greg Abbott also announced a ban on vaccine passports in Texas. It is an executive order currently, as it is in Florida. I know Florida is proceeding with legislation to codify it into actual law. I don't know what Texas's plans are right now, but currently Governor Abbott has announced a ban on vaccine passports. And he says, just as Governor DeSantis said, vaccinations are an important part of our health system here in the state, but they are not required. Vaccinations are not required. Therefore, it would be against basically all laws and human propriety to demand proof of a vaccination in order to be allowed into a business, especially one that receives state funds. And so Governor Abbott has said, absolutely no vaccine passports in Texas. Period. Done. End of story. I haven't heard what kind of penalties businesses would incur if they did try to do that. As you know, Governor Abbott took the mask mandate off of Texas back in March and also announced that all businesses were going to be open 100%. And 46 Asterisk called that move Neanderthal, and mispronouncing it as opposed to Neanderthal, which it should have been, and called it Neanderthal thinking. And of course, Texas and Florida and Georgia and other states have all seen their positivity rates go down, and it's continuing that way. Meanwhile, states with high mask bans, or I should say mask mandates and high lockdowns are experiencing another surge in infections. So there you go. Those states, as you might guess, are also behind on vaccinations. But far be it from a Democrat to screw something up that needs people to get things working. Okay, let's get to woke corporate. The big story's coming up, but let me just kind of ease into it. So what kicked this off was the calls from people like Stacey Abrams, failed gubernatorial candidate. She was once a state representative, I think, in Georgia. That's the biggest thing she's ever accomplished. Stacey Abrams is a race hustler, just like Al Sharpton, just like Jesse Jackson. She is a race hustler. I may be the first person to say that, I don't know, but it's true. Everything she has done has been based purely on setting the black community against the white community. That is her entire raison d'etre, however that's pronounced. And she's finally reaping the whirlwind. At first it was working for her. Her complete blowing up of the Georgia election process in time for the 2020 November election created Georgia now having two out of their minds Democrat senators for the first time ever. And because of that, the Senate is 50-50 with Harris casting the tie-breaking vote, thereby allowing the Democrats to basically push anything they want through Congress. They have a 10-seat lead in the House, the smallest lead they've had in 100 years, but they are acting as if they have a mandate from the American people to spend, create an even larger welfare state than we already have, and just absolutely bankrupt this country while pretending to do it for the workers. Oh, and by the way, it would require union membership, basically, if these bills pass. Basically require that. And welcome, White Fox Liz, to the D-Live chat. Very nice to see you. I've missed you. Very glad to see you. By the way, White Fox Liz, I have joined you in a certain speculative endeavor. And so far, things are just fine. And I'm going to leave it at that. So anyway, so Stacey Abrams got the ball rolling by calling the Georgia Bill 202, the voter reform bill, Jim Crow 2.0, Jim Crow on steroids, et cetera, et cetera. She lied about every aspect of the bill, making it sound like it was designed to disenfranchise black voters. Funny thing, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger from Georgia, someone with whom I have for whom I have no respect whatsoever, but he is at least trying to right the ship that he put onto rocky shoals. And he has pointed out that since Georgia instituted voter ID some 10 years ago, minority participation in Georgia elections has exploded. It's been going up by double digits every year, every 2 years, I should say. And in November, it was the highest it's ever been, and it will continue to be that way. But according to people like Stacey Abrams, requiring minorities to have an ID to vote is racist because minorities are either too lazy, too stupid, or too poor to get a free ID and find a DMV or use a computer to get one mailed to them after verifying their identification. And that is literally what they are saying. They are saying that minorities are either too lazy, too stupid, or too poor to get a free ID. They're also saying minorities are too stupid to be able to figure out what their driver's license number is. Because as you'll know, absentee ballots in Georgia that are available for no excuse whatsoever. If you want an absentee ballot in Georgia, you get one, period. One of the things you can do to prove who you are is to include your driver's license number on the ballot. And there has actually been a bunch of people who are supposedly leaders in the anti-racist community saying that that is racist because there are two sets of long numbers on the Georgia driver's license, and that minority voters can't tell the difference between one that is labeled DL number and the other that is at the bottom of the license that has no prefix whatsoever. They're saying that a minority voter can't tell the difference. Even when I'm sure Georgia would be sending instructions along with that absentee ballot pointing out where your driver's license number is on your driver's license. This is nothing more than pure racism, which the Democrat Party has been in control of since slavery. Remember, Democrats were the slaveholders. Democrats created Jim Crow. Democrats created the Ku Klux Klan. Ku Klux Klan. Democrats filibustered against the Voter Rights Act of 1964, filibustered against the Great Society, which I at least agree with in that regard. But they blocked every effort to get civil rights laws passed through Congress. It was the Republicans who pushed those bills through. Yes, it was a Democrat president who brought them to the fore, but if it wasn't for the Republicans in Congress and the Senate, they never would have gotten passed. Because the Dixiecrats in the House and the Senate were, for the most part, dyed-in-the-wool racists. They finally died out pretty much after Byrd, the former Grand Wizard of the Klan, left the Senate, Robert Byrd. A good friend of Joe Biden's, by the way, good friend of Joe Biden's. But who am I to judge? So, Stacey Abrams, Raphael Warnock, John Ossoff, and then President 46 asterisk himself started parroting this line about Jim Crow 2.0, Jim Crow on steroids. President Biden, during so far his only and quite laughable press conference, in which he lost his train of thought twice, wandered away from the podium because he couldn't hear a reporter because they make them wear masks, even though they've all been tested for COVID, and Biden is immunized, has been since December, but they're all forced to wear masks. Couldn't understand her because she has an accent, so he walks away from the podium to listen. That's fine. At first, no one knew why he walked away, but after watching it a couple times, I understood he just couldn't hear her, so he walked up to her. But then he starts answering the question before he gets back to the podium. So you can't hear him. He's not on microphone. This is the leader of the free world, folks. So he takes it upon himself during this press conference to lie over and over again about Bill 202. Over and over again. The Washington Post has given him 4 Pinocchios twice in 1 week over his lies on Bill 202. He said that you couldn't bring water to people in the polling line. That's crap. You can. You just can't be part of a campaign or a ballot initiative. You can't have a stake in the vote and hand out material, like a gift, even gifts. And the Georgia bill specifically states food and water as being considered gifts. That is electioneering, and that is illegal, unless you're at least 150 feet away from the polling place, in which case you can have as many signs and hats and buttons and stickers as you want. Totally legal. And if the polling station feels that the line's going to be long and people are going to get dehydrated, although I don't know how that happens in November in Georgia, but who's to say, then they can set up water stations on their own. And they can pass out water to voters if they want to. Now, again, I don't quite understand how a Georgia voter is so stupid that they can't figure out that if they're going to be in line for a long time, they can't bring water with them or bring a pack of Twinkies in case they need to nosh a little bit. But that's the way it is in Georgia, I guess. Georgia voters are so stupid, they'll stand in line and die of thirst and hunger before they'll do something to save their lives. That's what we've been listening to for the last 2 weeks, how stupid Georgia voters are. 46 Asterisk also said in that press conference that Georgia was changing the voting hours to where the polls would close at 5 o'clock, thereby, and I'm pretty much quoting here, denying people getting off work from their shift to be able to vote. That is another lie. Georgia's polling stations are open on Election Day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., have been for quite some time, and the law didn't change that in any way. What the law did was it mandated that certain counties who were open part-time during elections, because their county employees only work part-time, that those stations had to be open on the weekends from at least 8 to 5. And it also mandated 2 extra Sunday voting days for early voting. That's Bill 202 in a nutshell. So, for some reason, 46 Asterisk went on ESPN. He won't talk to Fox one-on-one in a press conference, but he'll do an interview with ESPN. And he said in that interview that he supports MLB players, Major League Baseball players, voting and demanding, basically, that MLB move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. And also, as it turned out, MLB took the MLB draft out of Georgia as well. He put his thumb on the scale and basically gave MLB his blessing to yank $100 million out of 2 predominantly black Georgia counties and wind up putting the All-Star game in Colorado, in a state that is over 70% white and in a city that is only about 6% black, Denver, as opposed to Atlanta, which is a majority black. Also, believe it or not, Colorado has stricter voting laws than Georgia, or at least similar in many regards. I'll get into that. And the White House is completely unrepentant on this. Peter Doocy, reporter from Fox, White House correspondent, God bless him, has gone after Jen Psaki a bunch of times on the latest issues, border, and now this Bill 202 stuff. And he's not letting up. Now, I'm not going to play the videos between him and Jen Psaki because it's gotten to the point where I can't stand that woman anymore. I've had it. In fact, I came up with a list of adjectives for her today. I'm not going to say them every time I mention her, but I want you to realize this is what I could think of within about 45 seconds. I've put it alphabetically except for the very last one, which I wanted to emphasize. These are my adjectives for Jen Psaki. Arrogant, condescending, dismissive, mendacious, passive-aggressive, patronizing, self-righteous, smug, lying. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. And that's just what I could come up with in 45 seconds. And then I arrange them alphabetically, except for the lying. That all took about 45 seconds. If I put my mind to it, I'm sure I could come up with a dozen more. All equally descriptive and accurate. She is a horror show. And I'm not even mentioning how often she says, She makes me look like, who's the name I'm trying to think of? Victor Davis Hanson. But who am I to judge? So Peter Doocy asked Psaki about Biden, saying that he strongly supported MLB players voting to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta, thereby giving explicit approval for MLB to do that. So Peter Doocy said, I just wanted to ask you a question about Major League Baseball. The league decided to move its All-Star game out of Atlanta. That's something the president said he supported before. Does he then agree with their decision to move that game out of Atlanta because of the voting law? Psaki dodged the question, as she always does, especially when it comes to answering Peter Doocy. And she, of course, referenced something that she didn't say before, as if it explains what she's about to say. She's always saying that you're not providing context, and then she talks about things without context. Let me see if I can find anything worth reading from her answer here. Here we go. I'm sorry. I can't mark these pages in Edge, so it's very difficult for me to find things after I've read them and have to go back to them. I do apologize. Quality life programming here on the All Hat No Cattle News Radio. And so she dodged a question, and he asked again. He does support the decision to move the game then. And Psaki comes back with, well, he supports them being able to make the decision and respond to what the players' asks are given. Many of them are impacted, of course, by these laws. How? How is a Major League Baseball player impacted by a voting law that requires photo ID? How? You remember, in that same interview on ESPN, our hallowed leader said that professional athletes are basically the most discriminated against people in America. He actually said that. He said they're the ones bearing the brunt of discrimination. They're making millions of dollars a year playing a game with a ball. And they are the most put upon members of our society. 50, count them, 50 black MLB players wrote a letter to the commissioner demanding that they move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. And that's what happened. So Peter Doocy wasn't done, though. As you know, the pretty much greatest golf tournament in history is the Masters. It's at Augusta, Georgia. I used to watch it every year from first tee to last putt. Never missed a minute of it. Over time, I moved away from watching golf because I couldn't play anymore, and it was kind of like, watching someone cook a steak but not being able to eat. But the Masters is the pinnacle of golf competition in the world. And it's played at the Augusta Country Club. I'm getting the name wrong, but basically the Augusta Country Club in Augusta, Georgia. Now, Augusta used to be white only. They changed that. In fact, there was a lot of discussion when Tiger Woods was first coming up about him being the first black player to play at Augusta. But I think Pete might have actually been the first one. I can't remember his first name now. There was a black golfer before Tiger Woods. But Peter Doocy asks Psaki, and again, keep those adjectives in mind. They're all still applicable. Does the president think that the PGA should move the Masters tournament that begins this week out of Georgia? Psaki again dodges, and I'm quoting. I'm not here to call for anyone on behalf of the president or the vice president or anyone to take steps in reactions to the law in Georgia. The president was asked a direct question, and the context of the question was also around the league meeting to discuss this exact issue, and answered the question. Doocy pressed, and all Psaki could say was that the White House is advocating for, quote, making voting easier and more accessible around the country. That's where our efforts are going to be from the White House. So once again, she refuses to answer a direct question about what Biden is thinking It is as if Psaki is almost never in the same room as Biden. I mean, you remember the press secretaries that Trump had. They knew what he was doing. They knew what he was thinking. Which at times must have been pretty difficult because the Trump White House would sometimes say one thing in the morning and then do a different thing in the afternoon. Sometimes it was pure chaos, which was fun to watch, really. The current administration is just a fast-moving train wreck. It's a train wreck and an avalanche at the same time, and there's no way to keep up with it. And Psaki is completely out of the loop. To me, it's obvious. She is completely out of the loop. And she is also a lying sack of you know what. So Psaki was also asked about 46 asterisk continuing to lie about the Georgia election laws, Bill 202. She was asked directly, is the president going to change the way he talks about the new Georgia voting law? And the reporter points out the points that I just made regarding the lies that Biden has been telling about Bill 202. Cutting off the voting at 5 o'clock, not being allowed to give voters water in line, and he's gotten 4 Pinocchios on that twice from the Washington Post. And the reporter points that out. And Psaki answers, well, again, I think the fact checkers will also tell you that this bill does not make it easier for people across the state of Georgia to vote. And that's where he has concerns. That wasn't the question. That wasn't even close to the question. I will give Psaki credit for never answering a hard question honestly. That is usually the job of White House press secretaries, to not answer the hard questions honestly, to obfuscate, to dance around. And I will give Psaki credit for that. She does do that well. Infuriatingly well. But she does it in such a smug and condescending manner that it makes my skin crawl to watch her. It really does. I shouldn't feel that way about a human being, but I do with Jen Psaki. She actually gives me stomach pains. Moving right along. So as I said, baseball in its infinite wisdom has moved the All-Star game from Atlanta to Colorado, Coors Field in Denver, specifically, where the Rockies play. Kind of a home run factory. Some people say it's easy to get a home run at Coors Field because of the air density being lower, since Denver is around 5,000 feet elevation as opposed to a lot of ballparks that are barely above 1,000 feet at the highest. Most of them are more like around 500-600 feet above sea level, around there. It's pretty much the average for the country if you take out the Rockies and the Sierra Madres. But well, Colorado, they have voter ID laws too. And again, Colorado is much less diverse than Georgia and Atlanta specifically. Now, quoting the commissioner, Robert D. Manfred Jr., Major League Baseball fundamentally supports voting rights for all Americans and opposes restrictions to the ballot box. Fair access to voting continues to have our game's unwavering support. Okay. So if you want to vote in Colorado, you obviously don't need voter ID, right? Because that would be racist. It's one of the biggest reasons Georgia's been under so much heat, because of that racist voter ID requirement. Quoting Colorado election law, all voters who vote at the polls must provide identification. If you are voting by mail for the first time, you may also need to provide a photocopy of your identification when you return your mail ballot. Oh. How is that not racist? I'll tell you how. Because Colorado doesn't have very many black people. Thereby, fewer voters are being disenfranchised by having to show ID, both in person and if you vote by mail for the first time. Colorado has signature matching after that. So let me get into the statistics here. This is plainly laid out in this article from the Daily Wire. Colorado is 86.9% white and 4.6% black. Georgia is 60.2% white and 32.6% black. Denver is 76.1% white and 9.2% black. Atlanta is 40.9% white and 51% black. How is that not racist? MLB, by pulling out, and I'm going to hammer this stat as often as possible, has cost the Atlanta area, Fulton and Cobb County specifically, close to $100 million in lost revenue. Thousands of hotel rooms, restaurants that would be packed, street vendors, vendors inside the stadium, both at the fixed booths in the concourse and the guys and gals working the stands. Hot dog, get your hot dogs. They're gone. None of that in Atlanta for the All-Star game. That's gone. Those people aren't going to make a dime. And remember, baseball shuts down for about a week during the All-Star break. So there's nothing happening in Atlanta for that week at all. No Major League Baseball. NBA's on vacation. There's no hockey in Georgia. So they got nothing for that whole week. So let me quote a particular tweet here. You know, I don't like to read all the tweets that, for some reason, these news organizations like to use as part of their reporting. But here's a tweet from Alex Salvi. Colorado voting requirements. ID required for in-person voting. Early voting 15 days prior to election. Georgia is 17 days. Poll times from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., exactly like Georgia. Incarcerated felons disenfranchised. Again, exactly like Georgia. So how is Colorado less racist than Georgia? Folks, you got to let MLB know that you're pissed. A lot of other people we need to let know too. And now I'm going to get into the main part of my rant. This is a joint statement on protecting voting access by the Civic Alliance. The Civic Alliance, as best I can tell, is a collection of woke corporate, mainly black corporate officers. Now, I'm not saying they don't have the right to be heard at all. Everyone in America has the freedom, at least used to say anything they want. Of course, if you do that on YouTube, you get demonetized. But I'm not bitter. So, oh, and hello, Stevie Bananas, to the YouTube chat. Ahoy to you as well, sir. Ahoy. So, the Civic Alliance put out a statement specifically about how voting rights in this country are supposedly being destroyed by the bills that have been introduced in about 28 states to clean up voting after the debacle of the 2020 election. Let's face it, folks, the 2020 election, win, lose, or draw, was the worst general election in U.S. history since the Gilded Age. Hardly anyone believed it was completely and totally fair. There were degrees of skepticism, from mild to severe, and I know where we all fall in on that camp. I can't say on YouTube, but we all know where we fall in on that camp. 46 asterisk is the duly elected and totally without any cheating President of the United States, honk honk. So the Civic Alliance puts out this statement. I'll read it to you. The right to vote is the cornerstone of our democracy, and this is from the second. We believe every American should have a voice in our democracy and that voting should be safe and accessible to all voters. We stand in solidarity with voters and with the black executives and leaders at the helm of this movement in our nonpartisan commitment to equality and democracy. If our government is going to work for all of us, each of us must have equal freedom to vote, and elections must reflect the will of the voters. Our elections are not improved when lawmakers impose barriers that result in longer lines at the polls or that reduce access to secure ballot drop boxes. There are hundreds of bills threatening to make voting more difficult in dozens of states nationwide. We call on elected leaders in every state capital and in Congress to work across the aisle and ensure that every eligible American has the freedom to easily cast their ballot and participate fully in our democracy. So, you'll notice that they never, ever use the word legally cast their ballot. They only use the word eligible, and they use that once. What they do say is that we have the freedom to easily cast our ballots. Easily cast our ballots. Why should voting be easy? Nothing else you do in America that requires an ID is easy. I have seen people point out, just in the last few days, how basically everything you have to do in America requires an ID. At one point or another. As I've often said, if you buy tobacco, even Juul cartridges, hello Sean Hannity, or alcohol, you need to show an ID. Most states have mandatory ID validation, no matter how old you look. My dad, God rest his, no, never mind, is in his 80s now, and he still gets carded when he buys beer. In a little town where everybody knows everybody. It is law in Illinois. How is that not racist? Major League Baseball. If you want to buy, if you want to pick up a ticket at the will call window, we know where someone leaves you a ticket, like if you know a ball player or someone in the front office or your corporate buddies have a box seat and they want to let you use it. You go to the will call window and you pick up the ticket that they've left for you. You have to show a photo ID to get that ticket. Period. End of story. How is that not racist? Shouldn't picking up your baseball tickets be easy and allowing us to participate fully in Major League Baseball? Folks, we've got to hold these people to their own standards. The gloves are off. They are off. No more, well, we're the conservatives. We don't play dirty. We don't play rough. We want to show people that we're moral and we're just and that we have the rights and the facts on our sides. F that. F that. Do not roll over on this. It is time for boycotts. It is time for phone calls. It is time for emails. Two can play at this game. We're quickly moving towards a left and right society here. 46 Asterisk was supposed to be the unifier in chief. He used the word unity about 12 times in his pathetic inaugural address. What one thing has he done to unify this country? He has canceled union jobs. He has stopped work on a border that most Americans supported. In fact, they're talking about restarting work on the border. I may have that later. I'm not sure if I have it pulled up. But they are talking about restarting work on the border. Let's see. Certainly, casting the Georgia Republicans as racists. Constantly decrying white supremacy and white terrorism in America, which is such a small thing. It doesn't even really count. Completely denying that Antifa is a thing. While they run rampant through Portland and Seattle almost every night. I could go on and on and on. The only unity Democrats want is for us to bend to their will and shut up and supplicate. And now woke corporate is chiming in. It used to be you could count on the Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, to be level-headed and stuff like this. As I pointed out not too long ago, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce gave money to 23 Democrat representatives who were running in swing districts who had beat Republicans in the previous election cycle. All of them had voted to impeach Trump. All of them. after running on a moderate ticket. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce backed every one of them. And I'm pretty sure all of them won that particular race. And now the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is sending out press releases about how horrible the proposed increase in corporate tax rates will be, how much it'll hurt small businesses in America. Where the hell were you guys last year? We told you this was going to happen. You knew this was going to happen. We told you over and over again. Yet you backed the Democrats. And now you're surprised they're going to raise taxes. Joe Biden said on the campaign trail, I'm going to raise your taxes. That's a direct quote. I'm going to raise your taxes. And so now we've got all these corporations. Look at this. Look at all this. All these corporations standing up against simple voter ID requirements. I can't begin to name all of them. There's 200 of them. I'm scrolling here. I put the link to this in the chat. I'm going to put it in again. Let me do this real quickly. I want you guys to take note of these corporations and do whatever you can to take money away from them, as long as it's within the law. I'm not advocating any kind of destruction, any kind of illegality. I would never support that. But there are ways for us to make our voices heard. I'm trying to do my part right now, rallying the troops, if I may. Levi's, Lyft, MLB. Let's see. There's another that I can name here. SoFi. Yeah, SoFi. Facebook, or pardon me, Twitter, of course. Uber, Under Armour. You guys all know these people. Viacom, CBS, Zillow. We all know those names. They're all trash. They're all taking their corporate money, their corporate power, and trying to tell American legislatures who were duly elected by the citizens of their states what to do. This is not about free and fair elections. This is about putting the thumb on the scales so that Democrats can cheat. The only reason you could ever have to be against voter ID, which, by the way, is backed up by the majority of every racial group in this country. Every racial group backs voter ID. And 70% of Americans in general back voter ID. The only reason you would have for not requiring voter ID is so you can cheat. That's it. That's it. There's no other reason. You can't give me one good reason. In fact, ask any liberal you know. Give me one good reason why asking for voter ID is wrong. And they can't. Any answer they give you will either be racist or a lie. It's the same with bringing illegals into the country. We all know that the more illegal aliens there are, the more they depress wages for low-skilled, low-education Americans. But what happens if you're discussing illegal immigration with a liberal? They'll say that the illegals take jobs Americans don't want. So what they're saying is, Americans are lazy. Americans are too good to do the jobs that they've been doing off and on for generations. Why should a black kid from Chicago who dropped out of high school, why should he be able to get a job as an assistant superintendent in a building when some illegal can come in and undercut his wages by 50% and be paid under the table? So there's no payroll taxes, there's no FICA. That's what happens. These people are the racists, you guys. These are the people who feel that people lower down on the economic and educational ladder in this country are too stupid or too lazy to do what white people can do. That is their exact reason for this kind of stuff. And it even extends to the boardroom for corporations that have black representatives either at the helm or on the board. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Black with white. Black with white. That's right out of the BLM squares from last year on social media. I stand with BLM. Here's my black square. That's what this is. These are the people who send money to BLM in such great degrees that BLM has two PACs, two political action committees. Meanwhile, you've got local BLM chapters who may actually be doing good in their communities. And they're not seeing a dime from BLM corporate. Not a dime. The family of, what's his name again? Brown, the Ferguson guy who got himself shot by a cop, Michael Brown. The family of Michael Brown is basically suing BLM Incorporated for millions of dollars that they say they have helped bring in to BLM through fundraising efforts and community drives. And they haven't seen a dime of it. And BLM, I haven't heard a word in the media about their response yet. I have no idea what's going on there. Yet corporate America sent them anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars last year. I believe BLM raked in something like $600 or $800 million, perhaps some people say $1 billion, in donations worldwide, for a Marxist organization that is hell-bent on destroying the nuclear family, thereby crippling any chance of a disadvantaged American from having a normal life. If you look at the stats for children who grow up without a father in the household, they are absolutely dreadful. The increase in chances of not making it through high school, of getting arrested, of spending time in prison, of fathering a child out of wedlock, all things that condemn you to a life of poverty. The numbers for kids from unmarried mothers' homes that happens to is absolutely eye-popping. And that's what BLM is for. They want to completely infantilize the black community. It was on their website before they finally took it down. You could have gone there last year at any time before the heat got turned up and read all of that in their mission statement. Destroying the nuclear family, destroying capitalism. And corporate America paid for it. Happily. The gloves are off, folks. I was going to read this article in full from the Epoch Times by Tom Ozimek, but I pretty much covered it all. I'm going to skip from there. But I'm going to mention 4 companies in this pushback, this 200 company pushback against election integrity. PayPal, Dow, Microsoft, and Uber. All of the massive multinational corporations. Massively multinational. Except maybe PayPal. I don't know if PayPal has international trading or not. I honestly don't know. But they're all on my X list. Picasso knows and I have a PayPal account. As soon as I have the opportunity, it's gone. I'm canceling PayPal. It's gone. Unfortunately, I'm stuck with Windows. I'm not smart enough to import a Linux system. I know it's fairly easy, but folks, I just don't have the brain power that I used to. So I'm stuck with Windows. But Uber is also off. They're off. I'll just have Picasso Nose drive me for everywhere I need to go. I know it's more of an imposition on her, but screw it. We have to stand up for ourselves. We cannot let woke corporate take over this country. We have to hit them where it hurts, and that's in the pocketbook. That is the only thing corporations understand is profit and loss. And they have stuck their necks out way too far, and it's time to bring the axe down. We're in the fight for our lives. We've already lost the White House, the House, Congress, the Senate. The Supreme Court has become a lapdog to the left. They're so deathly afraid of the Democrats packing the court that they won't stand up for anything that we expected them to. I mean, we fought like hell for Justice Barrett, for her nomination to become a reality and put her on the bench. And where has she been for us since then? Nowhere. Nowhere. Alito and Thomas are the only ones we've been able to count on for the last year. And that's not enough. We don't have media. All the major networks, the broadcast networks, those are all so far left, it's not even funny. You saw the hit job CBS did on DeSantis. That was purely preemptive. That was a preemptive strike to keep him from building up momentum to get into the White House in 2024. That's exactly what that was designed to do. And it's just the opening salvo. Expect more and more of this over the next 4 years. More and more of it. Fox News is leading in cable, thank God. But cable has a fraction of the viewers that broadcast media does, and always will. Got a lot of podcasts out there. Many, many podcasts. More popping up every day. This little one here. Handful of people. But it's worth it. It's worth it to me. I look forward to doing this every day. And we have to pull together on this. We cannot let woke corporate run this country. It's bad enough that we've lost all of the colleges and universities completely. If you're a conservative at a major university and you stick your neck out, you'll get flunked. Period. You'll get flunked. There's no freedom of speech on campuses. If you do try, they'll attack you. They'll literally, physically attack you. It's happened time and time again. They'll tear down your signs. They'll rip up your posters. They'll punch you in the face. That's happened. On camera, that's happened. All for being a conservative on a college campus in America. And don't get me started on K through 12. That's even worse. Those kids don't have a choice whether or not they can be there, unless they decide to drop out. In which case they'll probably get kicked out of the house. So now they're homeless. Or they're going to get indoctrinated, on woke culture, on gender fluidity, on transgenderism in kids. And I've got something about that coming up in the next segment. That's all coming down on our kids. And the Democrats are so in the pocket of teachers' unions, who are responsible for all of this horror, that they vote against charter school funding at every opportunity. They don't think minority parents are smart enough to choose a school that's not a public school. Honestly, that is their reasoning. I've seen it. I've read it. The Democrats' reasoning for not allowing charter schools is because minority parents don't know how to pick a good school. Therefore, they have to take the school that the state provides them. That is their reasoning. And they call us the racists. No more. No more. If someone calls you a racist, say, so what? So what? It doesn't mean anything anymore. Remember, it used to be we were all Nazis. Well, that didn't take. So now we're all racist. Fine, I'm a racist. Screw you. Do something about it. I've got an article from the New York Times that I pulled up on the archive. I'm not going to have time to get to it, but it is more detail about the manifesto from Civic, whatever they are. I can't even remember now. Civic Integrity, I think it was. I'm putting it in the chats right now. Check out this link when you can. It is, of course, an archive link, so you are not giving New York Times any traffic. It's going straight to archive.today. So check it out. Let's see. I think that is all the time I have for that. I'm going to cut off YouTube here. Move on to the after show, pardon me. So I want to thank YouTube, you guys, for being here. Green Badger Outdoors. Sorry I missed your Sorry I missed your chat. You are right. Vaccine passports are racist. Absolutely. There's no anytime you have to show an ID now, it's racist. In fact, if you want to play the civil disobedience card, next time you're asked for ID, say, "Are you assuming I have an ID because I'm white?" Or how could I have an ID? I'm black, or I'm Hispanic, or I'm Asian American, whatever nationality you are. Just put it back on them. That's racist to ask me for that. If you're white, ask why they're assuming you have an ID. If you're not white, if you're a minority, ask, well, that's racist. How could you expect me to have an ID? I'm a minority. And see what they say. Throw it back in their faces. Civil disobedience, folks. Don't take it so far that they call the cops. Don't get rung up for trespassing and never be allowed to go back. But make your voice heard. Make your voice heard. It's completely legal. You're not hurting anyone's feelings. You don't have to be aggressive about it. You can say it very matter-of-factly and see what the reaction is. You do that enough, people are going to get the point. All right. We're going to move on to the after show. Let me put up the split screen for a second. I forgot to do that the last few times. All right. So YouTube, I'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. I have no idea what we're going to have, but I look forward to it. And please consider, as you can see on the screen there, coming to DLive. You'll get the full show there. It has a great chat feature. It has microtransactions that allow not only myself to make a little money, but I get a chance every so often to give money back to you, and that you can use any way you see fit. The quote-unquote lemons in DLive are what's what I'm looking for. You can cash them in. You get about 4,300 of them, and you can cash them in for about $56. You can buy them. You can get them from the streams that you watch by participating in the treasure chest. Do whatever you want. It's a fun system. DLive has great stickers and gifts for the chat. It's really nice. The only thing I don't like about the DLive chat is the character limit's a bit low. So one thing I like about the Trovo chat, you can use more characters in your comments. So, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, I'll see you YouTube. Bye-bye.